Welcome to Dylan Has Movies. This is the movie review roundup, and I've been watching lots of movies lately, and here's a few more that I'm willing to talk about. If you're new to this, then just to bring you up to speed, these videos are just a collection of reviews, nothing fancy, and they're not in any particular order. Here we go. Denis Villeneuve is easily one of the best working directors in Hollywood right now. He has one of the best active track records in modern history, and he shows absolutely no signs of stopping. It's getting to the point where we should just give him complete carte blanche and just see what happens. While I was impressed with the sheer size of Dune with regards to the world building, the scope, the set design, the music, and all that, I didn't care too much for the story or majority of the characters, to be honest. I think I like the filmmaking aspect more than the film itself. Not to say that it was bad, because I did like it, but I just think the technical, how the film was made itself, far surpasses the film narrative. To see a novel as narratively complex as Dune be adapted like this is incredibly impressive. It feels like the majority of the aspects of the film were exhaustively thought out, and its sweeping of the Oscars wasn't a surprise in the slightest. All of the actors did good jobs with their performances, but nobody gave it their all. There was no career-defining performance that you could look back and say, that's the performance that put that person on the map. There was none of that. They're all competent, but there was nothing to cream your jeans over, so to speak. I'd like to see where the second part is going, and I figured that I have enough time now to read the book since it's coming out next year, and I've had the book on my shelf for at least 17 years since I stole it from my school's library, but I never dug into it, so here we go. Denis is working on a TV series called Dune: The Sisterhood, which will expand on the world a little bit more, and I think that if Dune was a series, like a little mini series, it could have been adapted to a full 10-hour season, which would give the story plenty of time to flesh itself out, but a 2.5-hour runtime was acceptable. It's long, but it's not boring. There's always stuff going on, which is great. But yeah, the filmmaking was a lot better than the film itself. It's being considered a zombie flick, and I wouldn't say that's entirely true. It's more like a film adaptation of Garth Ennis's Crossed comic series, following a virus that causes people to act out their most sadistic and monstrous outbursts on themselves and others. Needless to say, this film is pretty damn graphic. The victims of the virus all retain their memories, knowledge, abilities to speak, and are almost the same person aside from the unquenchable urge to commit atrocities amongst friends, families, and strangers. I can admire a film that eschews common decency to bring us sex via eye socket, but unless it's saying something, it's just being graphic for the sake of being graphic, and then you just need to wonder what's the point. I'm specifically referencing Serbian film. It's dog shit. It's a shocking for shocking. It has no moral or artistic value. The entire film is just a single note. Frenetic violence and shocking gore, and sure, for the first 20 or 30 minutes, that kind of stuff is pretty shocking, right? But afterwards, you kind of get numb to the whole thing. It just doesn't have that same impact in the third act when it begins to wind down. The sadness was shot during the pandemic, and you can see how some of that influenced the film. There's a few moments where the real life resonates within the film and echoes the distrust towards government officials, the medical community. There's hoax and virus deniers. All of it crops up somewhere in the film, but it's never overly obnoxious and it's not entirely focused on. It also has a solid electronic score, decent cinematography, and there's some colorful flourishes here and there, but this is certainly not for anyone aside from serious gorehounds. It's fucking insane. I was introduced to Ty West's work years ago in high school when I bought a copy of The Roost from a hole-in-the-wall video store, and I wasn't pleased with it. Despite this, it still remains on my shelf. I still own it. Now, come to think of it, I've not actually been a fan of any of his films that I've seen. Though if I had to pick one, X would probably be his best. I think Mia Goth did a good job in a dual role as Maxine and Pearl, much like Tilda Swinton in the 2018 remake of Suspiria. Goth's performance as Pearl got me to sympathize with her for a little bit, just the early stages of the film. She's an elderly woman who we assume to be neglected and unloved by her husband as she envies the youthfulness of the women on her property. Aging and losing one's looks is a huge fear for a lot of people, so it's an aspect that resonates with the audience. I can understand that. The cinematography is pretty solid. The opening minutes of the film before we get introduced to the characters is actually some decent, solid filmmaking. The camera floats like a ghost through the set, and I was pretty impressed with the handling of the direction this time around from Ty. I thought it displayed a growth in honing his craft. I'm not the biggest fan of the mumblegore genre. To me, it's the equivalent of sitting on a bench somewhere waiting for something interesting to happen. Majority of the films in the genre are just absolutely void of redeeming qualities, but I didn't hate X. I just wasn't wowed by it. Like The Sadness, it won't be for everyone, but I've seen it called a homage to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I guess that's pretty fair. It certainly does feel like a 70s thriller, though I'm surprised it was actually shot on 35mm and not 16, given the time period. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was done in 16mm, and Ty West even used 16mm to photograph the House of the Devil, so I don't know, thought it was kind of weird that they used 35, but it does look nice. I'm still not a fan of Ty West's filmography, but X was a baby step in the right direction.